tell you that because a lot of times maybe you don't hear that, but they're just wonderful. Uh, for the last 6 months, Pat and Steve, I'll introduce Pat in a second, have done a pretty exhaustive review of facilities. You've got thousands and thousands of data points that Pat will talk about in a moment that's going to help you guide and make decisions in budgeting and forecasting and all that. So Pat Callahan with Studio GC. Pat's an architect who has done multitudes of these especially across the state of Illinois. But that's his expertise, is looking at this kind of stuff and then helping develop plans, facility plans, upgrades, and all that kind of stuff. So he is the right person to bring to the table, and he's the right person for me to be quiet now and turn it over and let him take it and go with it.
Well, good evening. I'm very happy to be here with you this evening. I'll give you a little bit of background on our process and talk a little bit about what the team did. So I had 7 staff members come down, I think it was late July, early August, and spent the better part of a week here on your buildings, in your buildings, walking your buildings, documenting your buildings. And so it was Brody, Andrew, Anna, Damien, Marina, Eugenia, and Richard. So they're not here with us tonight, but I think I should acknowledge them because they did a lot of this work that we're going to be sharing with you tonight. So I think the important part about our process is it's a fact-finding mission, right? We're seeking out only to find out what is the condition of the buildings, what are the elements that we need to identify, quantify, put a cost to, and a life to, right? That's really, in a nutshell, what we've done. And I'll talk a little bit about the life too. These are just some images of the areas of focus that we felt were most important, and that's student safety, roofing, water infiltration, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, right? Kind of safe, dry, and warm environments would be the focus of what needs to be done to keep the building safe, dry, and warm. Although the documentation that we did went far beyond that. It went to doors and windows and floor finishes and educational environments, etc. So the result of the audit is comprehensive, but I think we're going to focus a little more today on these 4 areas because I think that's more germane to some of the discussions that you'll be having here in the future. Now, when it comes to materials, in Europe, there are professionals called quantity surveyors. They're effectively engineers, but all they do for a living is count. And so they have done a very, very good job, since the buildings in Europe are much older than our buildings, in quantifying how long building components should last, right? So they have a very thick book. How long should a concrete sidewalk last? How long should a limestone exterior wall last? How long should a window last, etc. And these are published standards for how long elements of your building should last before consider for replacement. There's no expiration date on what you have in your buildings, right? There's no tag that says this must come out on this day, sell by, use by date, those kind of things. But there are signs that we begin to look at. For instance, the upper right, when you start seeing standing water on a roof, right? It means the roof is starting to either fail, settle, sag. The water's not getting off the roof, it's not getting to the roof drain, so is the insulation wet and collapsed? So it begins to give us some clues, but we don't just rely on the documented longevity of a building product. It's quantified in 2 ways. We start with the modifier to say if the roof went in 2025 and the warranty on the roof was 30 years, the next time it should be replaced would be 2055. That's a 30-year roof with a 30-year warranty. Then there's a multiplier that is a visual observation as to, based on what we see, should that modifier be shortened or should it be lengthened? Is the district doing a very good job at preventative maintenance? And if so, that roof might last 40 years, not 30 years. So there's no predetermination as to how long something is until we look at it. There are some unique instances in the lower left-hand corner. That's an image of a lower storage room that has some water infiltration at the middle school, and that is, water literally coming through the foundation. Due to the time frame that these structures were built and the bedrock that we sit on here, water doesn't move or permeate through the ground, right? So if it sits up against a wall, it doesn't really go anywhere. And sometimes what happens is those materials are porous and they become absorptive. And so now we have to deal with some water penetration, seepage issues, if you will. So there's just a couple things that we identified. In the lower right, mechanical equipment is pretty obvious, right? You have a piece of mechanical equipment, typically has a 15 to 20 year life. If it's a rooftop unit like this one, how long can that that unit be serviceable for the district? And serviceable means not just maintaining it, but also what is it doing in the spaces in which it's serving? Is it keeping things cool? Is it keeping things warm? And is it dry, right? And in the upper left-hand corner for student safety, that's an aerial image of the middle school, is, proximity of things, right? Leaving one structure, students are outside unprotected to get to another structure during the course of a school day. Are those the types of things that the district wants to maintain or do at a higher level of security and student safety, as we look at each facility across the board? So I'm going to run through this part pretty fast. So these are colored utilization diagrams of each of your buildings. This is a three-dimensional model that we created for each of your buildings. It serves two purposes. One, it helps us quantify how many square feet of ceiling, how many square feet of floor, how many square feet of wall. And then as we go through the model, we also tag how many mechanical units there are, how many, pumps there are, how many hot water heaters, those kind of things. So we're able to put that information into our model, which is basically our digital database, which is what we're going to represent. Some of you saw a little bit of that yesterday, but I'm going to show that live today. The reason why I show you this, because tonight is kind of step one. Step one is to say, okay, what is the condition of the facilities that we have, right? It's a starting point. To us, it's foundational, right? This is just data, fact-finding information to say, here's our starting point. In addition, these plans also give us more precision on utilization, building utilization, and space needs, right? How effective or how is the building being utilized for classroom purposes, specialty programs, number of students by building, et cetera. So as we look to maybe the next step of this process, which is what's going to happen to the buildings based on the current enrollments, right? How are the buildings performing based on current enrollment? We have a little bit more information at the very end of the show that talks a little bit about the quantification of what that represents. And these, I won't spend a lot of time with these, just other than show you really quick. And of course, the spinning wheel of death started, so might give me a 2-minute delay here. But while this is a three-dimensional model, the three-dimensional model actually is represented in for lack of a better way to put it, a glorified database set. So all of the things you see graphically, we can quantify in cells, if you will, and then apply standard escalation and costing factors to the work itself to be able to project when an item should be replaced and at what time. So for instance, if we said in 2025 you replace something for $100,000, we would put a multiplier of 3.2% construction escalation to do that same replacement 20 years from now. So it compounds, but so in 20 years, the numbers that are represented in our figures actually push and say in 20 years, there's going to be an escalation. It's going to cost you X number of dollars more in future dollars to be able to replace that component. So the program automatically kind of escalates the dollar values for things that are going to be replaced past 2025, whether it's a year or 20 years. Just get through these really quick. So the start of the study. So this is a dashboard that we've created that essentially sits in front of the tab after tab after tab of spreadsheets that we have, effectively a database that supports this information. On the left-hand side, in this case, this is a building summary, or summary by building. So you'll notice that the wheel is represented in different colors, and in those colors we have the high school, Bedford Middle School, Lincoln, Dollins, Shawswick, Parkview, and as you kind of move to the left, it squeezes down the remainder of the buildings. On the lower side, we're looking or projecting this over a 10-year look. Because we think 20 years is too aggressive. 20 years is hard to predict. 10 years is a much more realistic assessment. And it's also predictive of kind of where the bulk of the materials that we're talking about need some consideration for replacement or some work to be done. So across all of the buildings in the next 10 years, and this is across all categories, so this doesn't include just the 4 that I represented, this includes all categories. So doors and windows and floors and the like. There's about $125.6 million worth of work that needs to be addressed. And again, there's no expiration date. Things can be deferred, things can be removed from the list. It just to give you a snapshot of what that looks like over 10 years. That's what the 125.6 represents. So if we take and say, okay, what does that look like just for the categories of work that we've identified as the most important for safe, dry, and warm? And that would be building infrastructure, security, and building envelope. Infrastructure is mostly mechanical, and that would also include any of the water seepage that we talked about in the first slide. And then the building envelope includes roofs in this particular case. Building envelope could include windows, but in this case it's just roofs. And over the next 10 years, it looks like there's about $70.4 million worth of work that needs to be addressed. And again, these are decision points. This is not a, you must do $74.2 million worth of work to get this work complete, to get these buildings, in shape to be occupied by students. They're currently occupied by students. It is important, though, to understand what that number represents in terms of dollars. And you'll notice down here, this is the 3.2% annual escalation that we use. Just wanted to clarify that point. So those numbers are escalated, right? Because they're not all that work over 10 years. So anything past 2025 is escalated.
And the component drop down, is that just to label your different types of service? Or,
Here?
There's year, there's building, and there's component.
Yes, I'm going to show you that in the live tool if you don't mind. And what that is, I can select and change which categories that number is represented.
So are there 3 components shown right now? Something like that?
Yes. So building envelope, building infra. So underneath this tab would be just those 3.
Building envelope comprises what?
Building envelope is roofing, predominantly, and in addition to roofing, it would include, let's say, the water seepage in the lower level, right? Building infrastructure would be HVAC, right, and any plumbing, work or anything like that associated with that, and then security would be the last category. And in this case, just to give you that snapshot over those 4 areas of work over the next 20 years, jumps to about 79. So the difference between the 70 and 79 means that the majority of that work has to happen within the next 10 years, right? So that's gives us an indicator, and we're going to play with some of these time scales and then the buildings as well as the components when we get into the live demo here in a moment. And then I'm going to go into detail on the high school and on the middle school. We're going to do that live because the detail is, these are just static slides. But again, on the high school, there's about $27 million worth of work over the next 10 years. Again, in these categories alone. And then at Bedford Middle School, over the next 10 years, about $18.3 million worth of work, again, in these 4 categories we just discussed. So before I jump to the live tool, I want to just take a step back and say, okay, let's look at the buildings themselves. Let's look at, age of the facilities as well as operational expense of the facilities, and then what is the current enrollment at the locations. And your average building age is about 77 years old when we look at the buildings across various district. It comprises of just a hair over 1 million square feet. 1 million square feet is a lot of square feet. So considering if you said that all that was flat roof, and I realize you have some multi-story buildings, but just for humor me here for a moment, if you had to replace a roof at $30 a square foot for 1 million square feet, that's $30 million, right, of roof cost. So it's a lot of inventory to take care of.
To be clear, Jeremy was taking, we're gonna have these slides after this is
Oh,
over, right?
As well as the tool, the ability to
And the data and the tool.
absolutely, yeah.
It'll be here though, right? We won't get it individually.
We thought it started out
I
here.
suspect we can get printouts at least of this.
Be happy to do that.
Okay. I was just curious.
And that was one thing too, that is, you could go in and we can print out for you everything specifically that you want, instead of just
Okay,
a
I was thinking you
large
guys were gonna leave it here.
binder.
Couldn't see.
But it will be,
Works
but
fine.
your tool will be here, and then as you get comfortable and wanna play with it, then you can have access to it,
To run scenarios.
to run scenarios
Right.
all the time.
On the operating expenses, what we requested was water, gas, and electric bills for 1 year at each of the facilities. And this number did surprise me a little bit, actually. So right now you spend about $3.1 million a year on water, gas, and electric for all your buildings. And when you take that number based on your current enrollment at roughly 4,412 students, that equates to about $7,749 per year per student to operate your buildings.
That's just utility operations is all you're naming there?
Well, I think there's a few other supply costs I've pulled out too, but most of it is.
Yeah, I'd say 3 million divided by 4,000. Okay.
So, but I think though, am I off by a factor of 10?
I'm not sure, but 3
Off the
million
top
divided by
I
4,000
was
should
thinking
be.
it's about a little less than 1,000, so we said.
So it'll be 700. I'm sorry. So 700. So, but that to me is interesting, because as you walk through the buildings, there are some areas of the buildings that are currently not occupied by students, where the mechanical systems are running. So, and some of that is part of the HVAC component of this, meaning the HVAC side of this is looking at not only physical, plant, but also is looking at controls, because obviously if you're not utilizing every area of the building, you should be able to isolate those areas so you're not expending those dollars on a forward-going basis. So any questions up to that point? I can jump into the tool real quick. Okay. So when we look at the tool, we look at a number that could be, from a time scale, infinite, and you'll notice that these bars get large because the tool assumes that when those units are replaced, they'll be replaced again in another 20 years. Let's say it's a roof, so it forecasts out past that. So, but our best target or guess is really looking at that 10-year mark, which in this case is 2025 to 2035. And when we drill into the building summary gives us the ability to look at any time scale we want. If you want to look at the next 5 years, we can look at 2030. And then in the component side, we can choose to look at all of the elements of work, or we can isolate the elements of work to, security, roofing, plumbing, and mechanical, right? So in this case, we could isolate it to that. And in the next 5 years, that work is estimated to be at about $56 million for those across all buildings. And then if we want to isolate the buildings, you can isolate the buildings as well. So just a little primer for you. Once you can start manipulating this live. You can look at it by building, or you can look at it by building component. So let's just take a look at the high school itself. So if we take a look at the high school and say we want to look at all of the elements of the high school.
So real quick, what are the concentric layers? Why the concentric circles?
So the concentric circles are a different way to drill down. You can actually drill into the circles themselves, and it starts isolating the actual values. We added this because we thought this would be an easier feature to use. But it just gives you a...
Duplicative of the component of the wedge part. Okay.
Yes. It's intended to be a graphical representation of the order of magnitude for those things. So it's just a different way of looking at it. Yeah.
Relative representation. Okay.
Pardon me? Yes, correct. Yeah, proportionate to the others, right. And then you can back through this. And then on the right-hand side, it lists the individual items. So the items are listed by category. So in this case, infrastructure, component, mechanical. In this case, an exhaust fan. Task would be to replace it, and the cost to replace it based on the year it was intended. So in this case, 2029. Okay. And again,
Your
that
estimates, are they customized then per building, or are you using some figure of merit that so many thousands of square feet uses usually this much?
so we use a historic database, and that historic database is our baseline, and we usually, so in this case, we did this in 2025, so it's using $2025 based on projects that we've bid as well as projects we bid over the last 10 years escalated. And then we also then use that number to be the escalated number moving forward with the 3.2% escalation factor. But again, you can leverage this detail on the right-hand side to get the individual elements by year. And again, we're just looking at the high school right now. And again, we're still looking at all components, but if we just isolate the components we talked about, which was roofing, plumbing, mechanical. In this case, the roofing, modified bit to be replaced in the oldest roof sections at $6.9 million. So just a way to read the chart. And again, you can use this wheel if you'd like, but again, I had the programmer modify this to expose these just to make it a little easier for you to click and be able to use. And then we've done the same for the middle school. And again, in this case, they are selected for security, mechanical, roofing, and plumbing over the next 10 years for this building alone. And again, you can identify in here the various elements, roofing in this case, infrastructure, air handling unit to be removed and replaced, what the air handler unit is, and the cost to replace that air handler unit.
Have we done, Kevin, anything like, let's say, an air handler replacement, that we can look at our actual quote cost of a recent job, look at this and say, yeah, he's pretty close? I mean, just doing a sanity check on the numbers, just, I mean, yeah.
And then it also allows you to look at this in reverse, because what we found is looking at things by building is great, but that's not how you do work, right? You're going to do it, say, we're going to do HVAC, it's going to be an HVAC project, it might be a multiple buildings. So looking at it by category might be a simpler way to look at that and say, we want to take care of all of the plumbing, or we want to take care of the building envelope at any one time. So again, the ability to then isolate the buildings that you choose, and then isolate whatever building component, in this case, again, the 4 that we selected. And then over here, you're able to then drill down by year as to what that number represents and which building it is for those 2 components. And then if you grab the wheel, it isolates building envelope, and then that means that these numbers that are represented here are building envelope figures related to those figures. So you can kind of drill down a little bit. The component or the building detail and the component detail, if you really want to get to the what is that exact thing, you got to drill down a little bit to get to it. It's really intended to be more of an overview tool, and if we need to get even more detail, we have all of the backup that's behind this to be able to help you do so, and we can print, reports. We just found that in the years we've done this, that getting spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet, binder after binder after binder, there's no way to correlate the numbers, and there's no way to really understand where you're at other than someone else doing the summary for you. And this just gives you some ability to start doing some what-if scenarios on your own accord to see what works best.
Question, you may talk about this later, but when we talk about security, are those enhancements or keeping things as they are in terms of the school security?
For the most part, school security, we isolated to the middle school, right? Because of the distance. The high school, I understand, is already being kind of reconsidered for from the Career Center to the high school building proper, because students actually have to leave the building. And then the internal configurations for the secure vestibules that already exist, we weren't modifying, but for looking at the middle school in its current configuration, because once you come in, you're in the hallway.
Yes.
And making, so we did kind of a security cost estimate as to what it would take to isolate visitors at the entry point, so that they could be vetted and secured before they were either released into the building or, completed their business and exited without being in the building proper. Any other?
If you print from this, you got option pie chart or the table.
It's predominantly the pie chart, and you can export it. And the other element of this is that when you export this, you can export it actually to a PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint also gives you the ability to do live embedded data, which means if you export yourself a PowerPoint, you could actually be linked to the data in it without being in the tool itself, and you can still do the same manipulations that I just shared with you.
Is there so taking the perspective of time, I think what's the most critical things first? And I know you can sort by your year selection down there, but is there like a, say, criticality index or something like that that says you absolutely have to do this? Something like that, or that's all in the decision space of us to read the.
I think it's in the decision space of you. However, it's not something we're going to let you do in isolation, because what we've done is we've analyzed each building component in its in situ condition. Right, it's sitting there. It's been there for some period of time. It's either new or old. How old is it? And when should that building component be considered for replacement? Looking at not just what is the projected useful life based on published data, but based on visual observation, what do we feel is necessary for the replacement of those components? So the time scale indicates the urgency in this case, right? Because we're giving you when we think at this point when those things should be considered for replacement. And again, it's a considered for replacement. It's not an absolute, because you may say, we don't have it, we can't afford to replace this entire section of roof for $6 million. We're willing to take some of this year's budget and spend $2 million. What can we do for $2 million? Could we get another 10 years out of this roof by doing X, Y, and Z? That's the kind of thinking part of this that gives you some flexibility to say, we can stretch our dollars if we look at things perhaps a little differently. I know it's a lot to take in, and it seems
If
almost.
you have something that you recommend doing in 2 years, and you get 4 years down the road and you haven't done it yet. So basically the cost will go up, right, but you won't have any kind of, like, design for granted because you haven't done it.
Correct.
You thought you should.
It does not.
But it does adjust the cost if you.
It does.
2 years past it.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And that's a good way to look at it, because it's not saying you have to do this. It's saying, here's what we're suggesting you do. And if you choose not to, it's going to cost more, right, at some point in the future. And we have a lot of districts that just don't have the resources to be able to accomplish a lot of this at once. But that's why I believe that this tool helps you develop a plan, right? as I told you tonight, is really kind of step one. And step one is to say, this is foundational information, things you may or may not be aware of, but now it is, documented to be able to say, okay, here is what the current state of our buildings are. Next step is to say, what is the current enrollment of each of our facilities and how much are we investing in those, including our annualized operating costs in those facilities, because that is a factor, right? There's district resources are being used to make that payment to keep that building operational. And so how can you kind of take all these variables and begin to stack them to be able to make some future, decisions? And that's really what we're trying to help you, accomplish. I know it's a lot.
Can you bring up, 2025 to 2030, needing more of all the books?
I'm sorry, I missed it.
For your years, 2025 through 2030,
Yes.
I mean, for the building, needing more?
Sure. So that's learning environments, infrastructure, and building envelope.
It's still 35, I think you went
2030?
2030.
Sorry.
So,
Is that right?
yeah,
20
it's fine. Yeah, which is, and then, same thing, but change from needing more to being more.
High school, yeah,
High school.
straight up to.
$3 million versus 25.
You want me to take the Career Center off or no?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
We had a nice tour of it today.
Good.
It's an exemplary building. You guys are doing some great work.
Can you do that for BMS?
Sure.
I was trying to see. Is it
Secure.
Okay, so is there I have to imagine there's some type of almost relative index of enrollment to operating costs and building costs and some magic number or some relative number that becomes your cutoff or your, and I get that that's in the calculus of all this probably.
Yeah.
You have,
So I don't have that for you tonight.
Yeah.
That would be part of my work for your next engagement sometime in the January, February timeframe. And we're trying to give you those ratios as to where these numbers should be based on, or not where they should be, but what you should consider based on utilization factor as well as operational cost and scope of work to be completed in terms of condition of the building. Because there is a kind of a three-legged ratio that we typically use in that regard. And we try to make that not relative to you versus another district, but you versus the buildings within the district, right? Because age does play a factor.
So, the underlying data on this, is it, did you say, is it like database driven or? is-
Yes, database.
So, if we had a facility that, we wanted to potentially add, a project, once you add that, when you go into the database and add that on the table, you don't have that big system?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
once you get the data, you don't have to massage it, that's
No, we have what we call a project tool. So what it does is you can take and pull work sets that are already part of this and make it part of the project, and then you can add a new line item. Say you wanted to add, 5,000 square feet of addition for some reason, and make that part of the project. It adds all that together as a project, but doesn't double the costs, right? It keeps it as a project cost, but it doesn't double the bottom line.
how good were our records, and I know we're doing some renovations even this summer when you were over here, how good are our records for when the last time we had a roof on a given given building or an HVAC overall? 'Cause I can't imagine we have perfect recollection, or maybe we have good records on it.
I guess I'll tell you that it isn't perfect, but no district is perfect. What it is, at least it's identified, right? So there was, a few pieces of paper for each building that had a bunch of different information, and it wasn't necessarily in the same format for every building, but at least we were able to go through and cull through what Donnie had to say, oh, this was the replacement in the last time. And there was an interview process that we went through to be able to confirm a few things, and then a verification process we went through as to what's been done in the last 24 months. So the good news for you is it's all been updated. So this now reflects that kind of current state of affairs. That's a great question.
Let's try it in Dutch this time.
Sorry. So I view this not as good news or bad news, just news.
Well, anybody that's lived in a plant of any kind that has multiple facilities knows that there's always a list of way more things you need to do than what you can afford to do, right? I mean, it's
Exactly.
universities, military bases, big companies, factories, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, this definitely helps us run scenarios, I think, to show our opportunity costs.
Yeah.
What's in our means and.
And it's up to us to prioritize, right? Like what,
Yeah, I mean,
this gives us some guidance, but it's also a sort of human decision in terms of what we think we need to do first.
I think in the end, yeah. I would say that one of the, when I walk my clients through these processes, we typically start with what we call our North Stars, right? What are the things we're not going to compromise on, right?
Like safety.
Yeah, so those are the North Stars. So once you establish what those are, it makes the decision tree matrix for how you're going to make these deciding factors later much easier, because you're all agreeing that these are the things that are most important to us. But you have buildings that have some age on them. There's no question about it. And you have buildings that are currently being used by students. And, in some cases, the building utilization rates are a little low and need to be considered to say, okay, should we have this much inventory of space based on what our current, population and student capacity is? And if not, meaning should we make a decision or a change? What factors are we going to use to be able to make that decision? And what supportive information are we going to? And it's not one single scenario. I would argue that, there may be 10 scenarios that come out of this, right? And I suggest you don't limit scenarios early, because you're going to find that the scenario in the end that you may end up with is a result of 2 or 3 of those 12 options kind of cobbled together, saying we want the best from this because that represents our North Star, this represents our North Star from option 2, this represents our North Star from option 3. What if we combine those and put those together and maybe result in a 13th option, if you will? And that's where the work, I think, becomes richer and more defensible when either the community or you as board members together collectively make a decision to say, we went through the data, we went through the knowns, and this is the direction we think is the best interest of the district and the students at large.
And we're not gonna leave you out on a limb on that. We're gonna walk you through, we're gonna be your partner in that, to help you. It's not, we're gonna turn it over to you, we're gonna be right there for whatever you need us to do to help guide you and pull information, and if there's something that's not there that you wanna see, then we'll get it and take care of it. Grant's pretty good about running all over the buildings.
Anything else?
So data integrity here, we don't wanna get in here and screw something up to where we
Oh.
ignore a $30 million, roof bill that somebody accidentally zeroed out. So how do we
You can't do that.
can't do that?
Yeah, we locked you out. You can't zero anything out. You can't break it. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Any
Challenge-
changes or any updates, upgrades, it goes back to Pat's team, and
Yeah.
they do it on the back end, so that you have that data integrity and no one can get in there screwing it up.
And if you see something you want represented in a different way, or something that's not in there that you think should be in there, that's an easy update for us, and then we re-upload it, and then we have a new interface.
Are you able to pull down this for the components?
Sure.
I think I know where you're going. That's a good idea.
Okay.
You know, and also, every district has their own common language on identifiers. So if there's something that you have that you call it differently, and we've got it listed as something, just let us know what that is, and we'll change it so that it's, you know, that it's, has your common identifier, so that you don't have to try to explain it a lot, so.
And one item in here that we typically leave blank till the end, if you will, is the funding source detail and the funding source summary. If the board in their deliberation says, you know, we have 3 buckets of money, come from this source, or this source, and you want us to parse that out, we can tag and assign project components by funding category, so that you can actually see that in a different format instead of looking at it in a lump sum.
So is this accurate then in live data for our, like, geo bonds and things that we have led over the years in terms of our lease?
Not on the finance side. It has to be tagged to it. So that's what I'm saying. If you have a geo bond, or you have existing reserves, or you have some other funding source, a philanthropic, somebody left the district $1 million, we can go back in and categorize and tag certain items for different funding sources to give you the ability to look at it over multiple. If that's not important, I'm just telling you it's an option. If it's not important, then you can still look at it in the aggregate.
So what is, well, you've got a strange time frame up there, I think, 5 to 10.
Yeah.
That's when Kevin's retiring.
So if I'm still around, then shoot me.
So is this the cost, or still the capital improvements expected, 125 million, yeah, that's what you said earlier, so that's still the cost, just without any revenues?
Right. So if you said, you know, we only want to pay for, and I'll give you a scenario. So I have districts that say, you know, if we're going to issue a geo bond we pay back over a 20-year period, right? We're not doing any work that isn't going to last 20 years, right? So we're only going to do roofing work out of the geo bonds. So they want us to categorize all building envelope work that's going to last 20 years out of so we tag that to geo bonds. And then we have others that have short term.
So this is only a descriptor column in your database that says, hey, we're just tagging this to say this is going to be paid with geo bond. You don't really have a model of our,
No.
like Damien would show us how the revenues are going in and things like that. Okay.
No, but if it comes to that, I'm just letting you know that that's a pretty easy, but it just sits down there at the bottom. So these two are probably two that you're not going to spend a lot of time, you know, tooling
I'm not
around.
saying that we can have a conversation with Damien and see if we could, I've always thought about that, is if we could take the bond schedules and when the bonds are coming off and look down, so you know in 2035, you have that, you gotta spend 20 million,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You know
because
that you've got,
ramp down, ramp up type
you've
of-
got, you know, these bonds expire, so now you automatically have roughly $8 million worth of capacity there. And that would be a matter of just a
Yeah.
data set.
Yeah, we've done that before.
I can't remember, maybe Kevin, you do, but we have an average about what we're averaging on our spread of bonds across the,
We have, before Senate Bill 1, Damien was here, and we have $50 million capacity left without raising the rate. North Lawrence previously has always paid their debt off quickly, so our geo bonds are set up for about 3 to 5 years, so that will rotate very quickly. So we've just, when I inherited the first 5 million, we've almost paid it off. Your leases are 13 years, most corporations go 20. Greater Clark is always 20, Northern Floyd County is 20 lease. So you don't like paying interest, so you pay a lot on your principal. I don't think it's a bad philosophy. So when we looked at the first part of this, it was about, for the Chevy, it was about $80 million over 10 years. If you do the Cadillac and you do everything that's needed, it's 120-some million, what we can't afford. So you'd have to decide out of that 80 million of the basics that we need, what buildings would get what. And you have $50 million unless you want to do a referendum or raise the tax rate. Senate Bill 1 has put a kind of we're kind of in a holding pattern till we see exactly what the rates are going to be, because your assessed valuation here in Lawrence County went up. That's a good thing. But till we get the feedback from the government, we really don't know what your capacity is. We did lower your tax rate. Used to be 40 cents on your debt. Right now it's 39 cents. We lowered it. That is done for strategy purposes. That gives you access to $6 million without anyone telling you you can't do it. Anything over $6 million, as you know, a remonstrance can occur and 500 signatures can slow it down. I do want to tell you that I do like roofs. I think that, like my grandfather, foundation and roofs are the most important parts, because if a roof leaks, who cares what's underneath of it, because it's going to be ruined. So I think our roofs have to be a priority, and we've already, luckily, they've already brought a person in to evaluate our roofs. And that is a priority that we're going to have to do, because in my opinion, even though it says it's 20 years and some of our roofs are at that level, if they start penetrating, that means the insulation gets damaged. We have to replace that. So I always believe you want to replace it before the roof falls apart. I've been in districts that had 88 buckets in a building. Well, that means it's a whole tear-off. That means you take everything off. If they would have fixed the roof correctly 5 years earlier, you wouldn't have had 88 buckets and destroyed your paint, your ceiling tiles, your mold, and everything else it causes, and done it correctly, then this expense factor changes. So I think roofs have to be something that is looked at. Next is our energy consumption. We've already started working on LED. In one district I was at, I did $1.6 million, did every building. The problem is here, you have a massive capacity and a limited amount of resources. So I need to know eventually through this next 6 months, where are we going to focus on these buildings? You don't have the money to fix all of them. So I need to be focused where we spend our resources. So that's what we'll be doing over the next 6 months, is coming up with a plan, and Damien's going to give them our finances to be able to plot. I will tell you the pool is not in this. The pool is old. It's not 77 years old average. Now you got to think of average. What does an average mean? That means you have a bunch of buildings that are really old and a few that are here to get that average at 77 years. That was a shocking number to me, because the high school's 52 years old. So then when I looked at the pool, it was built 2 years after it was built. Well, I'm going to be 58 and my plumbing's having some issue. So I can't imagine what, and I'm only one person, but we've had thousands of kids come through this district, and look what they do to your buildings. That's what business we're in. So the pool I've just been looking at, and we're now having it inspected because there's some issues. Those things are extremely expensive. So there's going to be hidden things that's going to come up to the district that you're going to get stuck. Oh my gosh, we're going to have to spend this to fix this. I think we have some electrical issues that now that I'm going to have to take a look at, because we've had engineers here. I was looking at the Career Center because it's older than the high school, so I assumed it would be your building that needed the most attention. Guess what? I was wrong. There are some issues at the high school that I've been notified because Grant's had engineers in here. I got to look at the pictures. We're going to address them because I believe some of it is a safety issue. So that's going to be the next thing. It's going to be, so it's amazing as they keep digging in, they keep finding things. Yeah.
So hearing that the pool is not included, and then I'm assuming then none of the athletic facilities, especially like out of the high school, most of which have been fairly recently
they're in decent
updated,
shape.
but, so are there other asterisks that we need to know about? Hey, we didn't take into account?
No, the pool is, I mean, it's a kind of a specialty area, but all of the other areas I think we've taken into account.
Like parking lots or sidewalks or the exterior?
Actually, I
issues
take
not
that
in
back.
there that we have,
Let me
aging
double check
septic.
something here.
Because B&L septic is 52 years old, so that's gonna have to be another category, but.
Yeah, I'm sorry, site work and paving is, yeah.
So, but I don't think this, because I don't think they know we own septic systems in few of our buildings. Because we did work on need more septic, that's the only one we really tackled, because we had limited resources, because there was so much. It's,
And if there's something, you know, that's highlighted that you want to see differently or added to or looked at differently.
Yeah, we can add.
That's the nice thing about this, we can add it to it, and then they're just repopulated. The one thing too, looking at, you've got, huge opportunities for savings in your operations, just in energy. We walked all the buildings, and everything's going pretty much 24/7. You know, your chillers, you're running, once you fix that, the controls, the lighting, you're gonna see a tremendous amount of, say, I think the high school alone, just on what we've done, Grant, but you're gonna see about an $80,000 reduction, and we're not done with lighting, but to date, and that, you're gonna multiply that as you move forward, that's gonna really help your operations. costs as well.
but the controls are crucial, because you have to think, we put in new chillers at the high school. They were designed to come on and off at different times. They run full power. So some areas, if you don't have controls, you can hang meat in it, because it's cold. Other areas is warmer. Until we bonded money to work on those controls, and they're studying it. But that could be millions of dollars to get the controls. Because we think of a control as a little thing we press on, but you have dampers that shut, that have motors. Those probably are burnout, so they have to be replaced. There's other valves that could be wore out that have to be replaced. Just because they do the controls doesn't mean there's not hardware that has to be. And you have pneumatics in one of the buildings. Pneumatics is air. I'll be honest, I haven't seen that in 20 years. It still works, but it's not efficient, and when it goes out, there's no part to fix it. So we're on borrowed time. But luckily, we're addressing it and coming up with a plan in the next 6 months, and try to help us how we bond money to fix what you guys think are the most important issues.
Did this study include this building, the admin building?
We did not include the admin building.
We have 4 buildings that are in very good shape. That's rain. And this has a steel roof, so it can go 50 years.
I just wondered about the safety, although we have the heating.
And that wouldn't be a bad, thing to do, is to look at, an audit of, you know, your door access cameras. Are they up to date? Do you have the most current software? Can you use AI in your camera systems? We have camera systems now that can take, as you go in, it can look at 100 people, and if somebody said there was a guy in a red shirt, got into school, whatever, you can go immediately identify anybody that's come through that's in a red shirt, and I'll show you the picture. Those are things that are out there that are worth the investment as you move through. But if you don't, those are things, if you don't take a look at it, and we don't look at it, you never know it. So
Excuse me.
I'd rather overkill, look at that and show you those things as to, you know, not, just not taking the time to do
I think all
things.
the cameras, schools in here, wherever we are, making sure we have them.
And we can do that, and then we can also take looking at what you have, and a lot of it, the cameras are IP, cameras that's hardware, that you can pull, you don't have to replace every camera.
Right.
then you can take a look at it. Now, when you're making those decisions, is that a want or a need? That might become a need, and something else that we thought was a need might end up being a want. So, and we'll help you through those.
And I think Kevin brings up a good point related to controls, just as a one factor of how we could to get the operational expenses under control. So when I meet with my clients, mostly we talk about what areas of your budget can you actually reduce without reducing people. And operational expense is one usually very big target. And so I've had districts actually reduce operating expenses to a point where that becomes a funding source for something else, right? So it allows you then to look at things globally as to how is that component additive to our conversation about the long-term matrix that we're going to put together in terms of where you're going to end up on the other side. So that concludes my formal presentation tonight, but I'm happy to stay as long as you'd like to answer any questions.
Looks like it's gonna be a very valuable tool, so I really appreciate the fact that we'll have it at our disposal now. As far as, we don't get blown away here. As far as recommendations, when you do take into account the enrollment part, and you look at our, I will say you'd be able to look at it more objectively than maybe any of us. Will you come forward with recommendations to say, or we prompt you to, I suppose, to say, look, if you had to close a building, this is the most expensive one, or the least occupied one, or some factor thereof, and give us that objective recommendation.
And I think that's important. I think that's so important for us to take the emotion out, and do it two ways. Take the emotion out, and that's what it looks like, and then start looking at, because there's going to be some emotion that needs to be managed throughout that process. And then what does that look like to try to get as close to here again? Because anytime you're looking at one building's going to get new HVAC and this building over here is not, wait a minute, they're a little, these teachers are, so we'll take all that out and give those recommendations, but also then work with you on, because there's going to be some of that emotional political stuff that you need as a board to consider as well.
The North Stars, or the non-negotiables, however you want to characterize it, are the things that help you as a group, but will help you as a group make decisions, right? At some point, there has to be some foundational lens in which you're going to look at this objectively. We will come to you with some ideas, and within those ideas, give you the framework of that, right? This one's expensive, old, and has an existing occupancy of X. So when we give you some scenarios, if you will, we will provide you with the framework that we, as a team, have evaluated for that. But our idea is to generate as many as possible, and not generate an exhaustive amount, because once you get together and start working with ours and yours, there'll be more that come up.
This is step one, right?
Right.
Correct.
Not discussing.
That's correct.
Kind of facilities changes.
Correct.
Now it's
So we have the
just
stack finding, we have the stable. This is step one. So what additional information can you give us in step two? What's next?
Step two will take the building utilization into account, the overall cost for projected work within that facility into account, and then overlay enrollment onto that. So that'll be the next thing that we'll give you is
Are you going for the four major components? You don't want to know roofing, HVAC, safety, in-building. That's what I was been looking at. You gotta remember, they've looked at everything. Our furniture is old, this and this. They've got everything. You just want the four major components looked at, correct?
We have that data ready.
Yeah, I mean, you can toggle it on and off, right?
exactly.
This
nice thing about it is you can, once you get to the four, then you can
Once you're
start.
at it in the next step, that one doesn't impact that.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I
right now,
think
let's
that's
leave it. When it gets to decision making, we may decide
What sections?
what really we want to consider.
I think if we apply those four to all buildings, then at least we're looking at everything equally, right? You could always toggle on or toggle off.
And with the other ones, you save a lot of operations costs, other things like that, but usually some of those things to be impacted versus.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were gonna say was operations costs. You didn't say that. You said occupancy, and then you talked about enrollment, which you're double counting there in
We
terms
have
of.
capacity, operations, and,
I'm sorry, I must have misspoke. I meant operations.
You meant operations.
he
Yes.
spoke, he took us.
Everything was on the chart, or, here. Can we go on with that?
I've been talking for almost an hour, so.
No, it's fine.
And anybody that, I'm just a short drive away, if you wanna come in, you wanna go through this, and just, we can go through it together for a while, I'm happy to do that, at any time, so you can go through it. Grant, he's here, Grant's gonna be here for 2 solid weeks, here coming up.
2 weeks.
If you wanna take a tour and see any of the stuff that we've looked at, you wanna know what Grant is, just let him know, he's here, you can meet him, he'll take and show you, he's identified a lot of stuff, and he's finding a lot of stuff, that you wouldn't find unless you were going through this process. That's nobody's fault, but as deeply as we're digging into things,
You've been in every closet.
so.
I don't know, I mean, certainly I haven't, but I don't know if we have as near the facility and maintenance staff that we used to have, 20 years ago, where people know those things, and those nooks and crannies, and know everything, where the skeletons are buried, so to speak.
And that's what I like about Illinois, something I didn't know till I met Pat. The General Assembly legislature.
Something you like about Illinois?
Illinois.
I don't even like Illinois.
Well,
Lincoln, that's what we got.
the fact that the Bears might be Hoosiers.
Uh,
But anyway, what I'm saying is, they're required by law to have this study every 10 years. So every 10 years, you're identifying what those issues are. There are some districts that never had a study.
Well, I recall reading the 2017 feasibility study, and it just basically did occupancy, fill rate, and that was about it. I mean, I don't think it identified work that had been done or work that needed to be done.
Every day it's just one of these.
So,
Yeah, it's all
The
about
average age
laws.
is scary.
And then
If you take the place,
how many times
take
something
that building
been
and
done.
need more hours.
Yeah,
It was
every
old.
year that it was done.
Really old.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't remember any projections.
so many years of doing nothing.
Well, except for the Shaw's Authority, that one, I don't, I mean, maybe the main floor of that building's that old, but the rest of it's not.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the middle school was built in the late 80s, and Shawswick Elementary had the middle school built in the
The reason why
same
we
timeframe. So some of that stuff's a little misleading, look at just the original.
typically we use the oldest dates because that's where the core,
Core of the building, yeah.
the core of the building
Plumbing
is. Yeah.
I mean, middle school, I, you know,
Yeah. But I mean, if we averaged within the building with all the additions, we
But other than a, wow, gee whiz, that's really not factored into your projections of when a new roof will be used or something.
no, because we looked at so we evaluated the component.
Latest roof
Yeah.
that was put in.
That's why the age of a building is only a representative.
what's the average lifespan of a building in your estimation?
The oldest building that I managed went offline in 2015. That building was built in 1888. So, and it was the oldest continuously operating elementary school in the state of Illinois. So,
Abraham Lincoln,
yeah, well, it was 26 years after the Civil. It was built 26 years after the Civil War. So, we typically say 75 to 100 years, and again, it's all relative on how much maintenance and how much work is put into the building to keep it.
it's like everything else, if you take care of it, it will live and we'll use that of it.
Yeah, say, you mentioned Europe.
Oh yeah, right.
Where they ring
Thousands
centuries
of-
out of
yes.
their buildings.
Exactly.
Yeah,
No
just say,
ice. No HVAC.
teenagers were.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Or ice machine.
Anything else? Absolutely, my pleasure.
So, okay.
who on our side is gonna be the belly button and the manager of this tool?
It's gonna be in this building.
Yeah, it'll be here, and then to start, so you've got, and then anybody, like Donnie, if I'm looking at budgeting, I'm looking at this, cause now as I'm thinking 5 years down the road, I can pull out and see where, yeah. But just as soon as Kevin gets it.
It's live right now.
It's
So.
live right now. There's some software, it's just a Microsoft license for Power BI. Once you have it, you can access it at home.
I'm fairly certain you can get a free trial for at least, usually they do that month free trial, so.
And once you have it, I can send you, I've got the link,
Mhm.
send you the link, and you can get started on it if you, so.
My thought was I would think the corporation would wanna have someone who's kind of Power BI guru, or someone who knows how to use this tool better than versus all of us trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
master it or something.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.